Anyone see the highlight of the Yankees game last night with the Dodgers with the fan and Mookie Betts?
Hey, you come for Mookie, you come for me.
I thought you were going to say
Bottom line,
that. Yeah.
Look, I will defend Mookie forever. And even though, he's no longer a Red Sox, but he always is in my heart, for sure, that was some bull crap.
Well, the two fans were ejected. Mm-hmm. Somebody this morning told me that they thought they were ejected and banned for life. That's not the case on the story that I wrote.
No.
That I read. But that
they've been banned from the next game, though.
Tonight? Game 5?
So, yeah.
I thought they said they could return to Game 5. But
no, they're out for
Game 5. Well, that's the last home game, no matter what, for this year. But he has the ball. And you've seen it, you probably have. And the fans literally just grab his glove and start ripping the ball out of his webbing. It was just bizarre. I just wanted to start with that because, you see poor Steve Bartman, who, went through that trauma and did what any fan would probably have done. And then you had the ball where the Orioles outfielder's about to catch it and someone leans over, a fan. That was just, that just kind of was weird.
Okay. But you mentioned that one. Okay, that was Jeffrey Mayer.
Mayer.
Why do I know that little turd's name? Because he gave Derek Jeter a home run. Since that time, there's been it's a small minority of Yankee fans who sit on the wall who believe that is something they should do.
Well,
Austin, the guy's name is Austin Capobianco.
Leave it up to an Italian.
Yeah, well, yeah, look, he's there, but he's a season ticket holder. He sits right there. He told Jesse Rogers, who went and found him at a bar last night, that if the ball comes in our area, we're going to D it up. Well, that's not what you're supposed to do. Poor Steve Bartman was focused on listening to the broadcast. He's sitting there listening to the radio. He sees the ball come. He doesn't do anything. These guys not only interfered, but they could have broken Mookie Betts' wrist. Yeah. And that's a culture that has to stop. And yes, I'm putting an extra pepper on this because it's Yankee fans, but they've kind of had that attitude since '96 about sitting on the wall.
He has said his job is to monitor the wall, to take care of anything in that direction. But I know that's a baseball thing to start off with. But since there's no off the radar today with it, I thought I would open up with that just to see if anyone else saw it.
It's interesting. It's just it's kind of one of those things. I don't even know what to say about it. The slow motion video of a guy literally holding on and reaching in and opening up the glove, it's just kind of disturbing in a way that anybody would think that would be okay to act like that. But then again, if anybody were to do it, it would be Yankees fans because there's this entitlement that just kind of comes, this stereotypical entitlement that I think is very real because you see them after the game, they're taking pictures with these guys like they're newfound celeb, like they're the Hawk Tua girl or something.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure they'll now have a TikTok account that gets 100,000 followers for their bravery and trying to help the Yankees win a World Series. But you talk about two stereotypical SNL parody looking Yankees fans that we'll probably see getting goofed on, Saturday Night Live or something like that. This looked like a skit. It was so absurd and over the top that it looked like a skit of some sort. I had to check, is this a YouTube video or is this actually real life? No, it was actually real life. And that was what was probably most disturbing about it was that anybody thought that would be okay to, if you haven't seen it, literally hold Mookie Betts' wrist and have another guy peeling into his glove to rip it's how in the world was that remotely in somebody's brain as being okay? That was, I don't know. That's the kind of behavior, some things just nowadays, I'm almost disturbed by kind of how people are acting,
How many times do you now see after each weekend, college or pro, and especially in the NFL, these brawls out on the concourse?
Yeah, I think that's been going on until the end of time. I just think that now there's a lot of people who I don't want to start sounding like get off my lawn, but it's very much the internet culture, of just famous at any cost and the come at me bro on every issue known to mankind. Everybody's super hyper aggressive about everything. And I think, this is another one of those instances. But yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes over. And if I was on the fence before, go Dodgers. I really wasn't, but especially now, so go Dodgers.
He said, I know when I'm wrong. I know when I'm in the wrong, and as soon as I did it, I was like, boys, I'm out of here. I patrol that wall, and they know it. I saw this part. This is the part where you guys said he's banned forever.
I said he's banned for tomorrow.
I mean, tomorrow.
Game 5.
He said allowed that they would be allowed back for Game 5. That's in the story that I read. But yeah, that's tonight. That's Game 5. Game 5's tonight, right? They played 3 in a row.
I do like how the story reads like Major League Baseball told the Yankees to do it. Like they had to say like, hey, you can't let this guy back, right? Like you guys can't. You can't almost break the right fielder's wrist of the opposing team and then let the guy back in for another game so he can potentially do it again.
Yeah.
Because
USA Today, Yankees fan banned from Game 5. ESPN banned from Game 5. Fox News banned from Game 5. So, like I said, they're banned from Game 5.
Yeah.
But
all right, let's get to some college football. Behren Morton will start for Texas Tech this weekend, and they're in need of a win after such a great start, and all of a sudden they lost at home to Baylor. And then, of course, last week it seemed like they had everything in hand and had a chance, even after they'd blown it, to kick a game-winning field goal. Then you had the fumble. Will Hammond, who was at Hutto High School, and we watched him play last year, really, really good player last couple of years, and then the fumble, and that ended the game or Tech's chance to win that game. So Behren Morton, he's beat up, he's sore like everybody is right now, but there was the question about whether he would be able to play. He will play coming up in that game this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's good news depending on who you are. I think for Joey McGuire and Zach Kitley and a lot of members of that football team and some of the supporters as well, and they're glad to have Behren Morton back. I think everybody's glad that he's not seriously injured. That's the big thing. I mean, you didn't know when he left the game last week whether this was going to be a lingering thing or whether this was a temporary type of injury, and obviously very temporary that he's back and not missing any action whatsoever. So that's great on that front. And Joey McGuire made it clear when talking in the post game that he would be their guy if he was healthy over Will Hammond. Although Will Hammond showed some good things in the midst of also some just newbie struggles.
Right.
But I also think that Hammond provided a little something different that excited some people, especially in the midst of a season that kind of feels like it's going sideways all of a sudden. And so there was some excitement that Will Hammond was now going to be the guy. So I think you've got a little bit of a torn opinion that some were kind of hoping maybe he'll be, the guy for a couple games and we'll get to see more of that and just kind of see if he does more for this team. And then there's the side that's like, no, Behren Morton's the guy. He's done a lot. So I think it depends on which Red Raider fan you ask, whether they're happy about the Behren Morton news or not. But that's great for him.
Paul, before you respond, Katie Rader goes, it also say Will Hammond's red shirt, that he won't play much more. At least you don't think so. So that's also an important fact. Katie, thanks for that.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I guess it's going to be really hard because Will Hammond came in and he was dealing. He wasn't the reason they lost to TCU. That defense, not Warden.
Fumble was
fumble.
Big
Yeah,
but they lost TCU.
But yeah, Will Hammond was dealing. So they, I can see people wanting to see him. But the biggest problem that they've had the last few years is that they've had to play 3 quarterbacks every year. I would just rather, for the stability of it, and I know you've lost a couple games in a row, but I'd rather just see Behren Morton back out there, if it were me, to see some consistency in that for at least a whole season.
Yeah, they were winning when he was the starting quarterback. They had that one loss to Washington State. Will Hammonds is going to be a heck of a player, you would think, and they're always going to have quarterbacks at Tech. But in that fumble, he turned around and bam, here a guy hits him right in the chest, and when he fumbled against TCU over the weekend.
I want to make sure I'm hearing Hammond.
Yeah, Will Hammond. What am I saying?
I thought you were putting an S on there.
I am. You are right. It's Will Hammond, singular. But we did see him play. That's true. We saw him twice. It's plural.
I'm just a stickler for trying to get names right. I just think that's a respectful
Why would you
thing.
with a name that's mispronounced a lot when you were growing up?
It's really not that hard to pronounce if you word it out. But anyways, I thought he looked really good in the spaces that we saw him, threw the ball well. He's a very dynamic runner. We saw that in person as well when he was at Hutto, and that's a threat that you saw a little bit last week. But I think that he's got a really bright future. That fumble was just really unfortunate, untimely that he got caught spinning. But again, that's kind of what he does though. He'll do a spin move, and sometimes that can get you off kilter and make it easier for a guy to knock a fumble loose. So that's the bad that comes with the good. But, yeah, he's got a lot of good football in front of him. But there is – I mean, that's just – it's like fans root for the second quarterback. That's just kind of natural, and especially the young quarterback. So there's maybe a small portion that would like to see more of him. But, yeah, maintaining his red shirt, and if Behren Morton's available, he's your guy. That makes a ton of sense.
And then Texas Tech will be challenged, no question, and maybe they play a game that's a little bit more, I guess, free of errors when they have to play Iowa State coming up. So they turn around after losing a couple of games, and now they're in Ames coming up this Saturday, ESPN at 2:30. Mike Elko, very, what's the word? And in fact, it says, we have not made that decision on his quarterback, whether it's Connor Wigman and or Marcel Reed. Reed, of course, got awarded a lot of things, including the Earl Campbell, Tyler Rose Award, among others. I think even the Davey O'Brien Award for the weekly winner this week came in and rallied A&M to that great win against LSU, but they have not yet made a decision. Do you feel like that they're just playing coy, or do you feel like he doesn't know?
I think they're probably playing coy. I think they know what they want to do. And it is an interesting situation, though, because Connor Wegman against LSU and against Notre Dame, I mean, I wouldn't call it like tragically bad or anything. He just wasn't that effective, and Marcel Reed against LSU was. Like, I still think there's some things there, and maybe the offensive scheme and the players around him don't really match his skill set completely, where with Marcel Reed, it just looks like it does because of Colin Klein's offense. So we'll see. I think they actually have I don't think this is a huge problem. I think this is kind of a good problem to have because they've got actually three guys, although Jalen Henderson's been hurt, but they feel like can run the ship for them, and most teams barely have one. So they've got a good problem to have here, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of stress or fight going on. It's they're all in the boat together right now. Now, this isn't going to last another year. One of them will be the starter next year, and the other one will probably be in the portal, but I think it's fine for now.
I don't know how this is even really a debate. I think Marcel Reed's the quarterback, and this is gamesmanship, if anything. If not, then I just don't. Maybe I'm just watching the wrong sport or something. Maybe I'm watching the wrong A&M because I don't see how it's really even particularly close right now, given the momentum that Marcel Reed's given you when he's been in there versus what Connor Wegman's given you time and time again when he's been in there. I know Reed's still got some improvement as a true freshman, but that was pretty special last week. So I don't know how you don't roll with the guy who just led a massive comeback in the second half in a quarter and a half of action where you were flailing and dead on the road to losing to LSU. He came in and saved your potential playoff, right? So I don't know how you don't ride with that guy, but I don't know. Mike Elko knows his football team better than me, and I'm sure there is some element of gamesmanship, not only for the opponent, but for his own locker room of having to handle that a certain type of way to ensure that everybody's happy. But it seems like what Paul said, that they've got a good culture going on right now in College Station, so they'll handle this and not have too much drama from it, I'm sure.
Well, they've already had to change it twice, right? It was initially with then Wigman, and then it was Reed, and then Wigman.
And if Wigman wasn't some big talked about recruit, we wouldn't even be tripping over this. It's the fact that he's expected to be some great player that he has not been at all, but he's shown little flashes here and there. So it's like we're talking about this kid like he's Arch Manning or something, and it's not. That's not what it is. So
no, and again, he's not again, I've watched him every game that he's played. The Missouri game, he played really, really well, but they also are running the ball down people's throats, so it's easy to play well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that Florida-Georgia game, which is the biggest cocktail party ever, moving to Atlanta next year, Tampa in 2027 at Raymond James Stadium, and then they'll be back in Jacksonville as that Everbank Stadium is renovated. I went there one time for the Super Bowl when Jacksonville hosted the Super Bowl, and obviously been to Raymond James, and not sure if of course I've been to Atlanta's stadium too. They're renovating, so where are they playing it this year?
They're playing at Everbank.
Okay,
but this has been in the works for a little while because Everbank Stadium needs a rebuild. I can't remember where the Jaguars are going to play over those 2 years.
They're going to play every game in London. They're going to stay in London and play every game in London.
if they weren't going to rebuild that stadium, I would say that's probably hey, look, Jacksonville can't afford us. Let's go to London. And Roger Goodell would probably love that. But they might play more games in London, or I don't know. They'll figure something out of where they'll play. They might play Ben Hill Griffin. It's a plenty big stadium, just not an NFL stadium. So we'll see. But yeah, so the cocktail party not going to be in Jacksonville. I wonder, because they say it's going back to Jacksonville in 2028, but if it does well in Atlanta and Tampa, Jacksonville will run the risk of losing that thing and it becoming a rotation.
Yeah, like that will. Okay, after what we've learned the last 4 years with rivalries being interrupted, or even more than that, because the A&M Texas back in 2012 started to get interrupted, and other particular rivalries, you would think that would never happen. Like Texas OU, I can't imagine they would ever play anywhere else but Dallas. There was the thought maybe they would move to AT&T Stadium. The Cotton Bowl was renovated over the years, but you'd wonder in that case. So I would never say never, but I hope it doesn't leave Jacksonville. That seems to be like a Texas OU in the Southeast. All right. Last night, Texas State beaten by University of Louisiana, 23-17. GJ Kinne's team is 4-4. Jeff Traylor's under 500 at UTSA. They're not having the years, either one of them, that anyone thought. Sam Houston beat La Tech 9-3 last night. But your thoughts about, guys, Texas State was a team that we thought might win that conference, and they're now looking at 4-4.
Yeah, they've disappointed, that's for sure. And look, you're going to maybe live that life when you have to have so many itinerant players like they do. And you know, this is year one with no Frank Harris for UTSA. So it's been maybe a bit of a jolt to the system. I will say this, that there's two fan bases, one that's very close to us and then one that lives in Little Rock, Arkansas, that were, I think, maybe planning on interviewing those two head coaches for their jobs. At least the fans were. Mm-hmm. But right now, both those coaches look like they're not going anywhere in Dave Aranda and Sam Pittman, because I think Sam Pittman's pretty much saved his job, and Dave Aranda's got a great opportunity here in the next month.
Yeah, so we talking about Texas State or UTSA here? You're just giving the example of –
I was using an example. They both had high expectations. Both of them, of course, down south of where we are. Texas State, we saw with what GJ Kinne did a year ago, and Jeff Traylor at UTSA, the run they've had, and they're both right now they're stalled. And UTSA's under 500, but they played last night, so that's why I thought it was a current topic for right now. They're now 4-4. Louisiana 7-1, unbeaten in the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to make sure I was hearing you correct, because I heard you start talking about UTSA there. So, yeah, I mean, they're similar in that they both had big expectations, although, I mean, I think UTSA's, in hindsight, were just expectations based on what they've been doing for the last few years and not so much about this actual football team. Oh, Jeff Traylor's team will be good. Why? Because it's Jeff Traylor, and they've been good for a few years. Well, they just lost Frank Harris, who's been their guy for like 6 years in a row. Yep. So that's going to, matter. They've got a younger player there in Owen McCown, who's running the show now, who's going to be very good and has been very good in some cases, even here recently. And not his fault necessarily that they've lost some of these games. But, yeah, I just think that you had kind of this roster that was for the most part stuck together for a really long time, that was very seasoned and battle tested and all of those things. And now it's like a brand new team. And it's puppies, that you're having to raise up all over again, where you had some like grown-ass dogs these last couple of years. So I think that's part of the issue.
You had a full-grown man in the quarterback, Frank Harris.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, they had the whole group basically together. There's some guy like Zachary Franklin eventually left, and so on and so forth. But, for the most part, he had his core. And even then, even the backups got a lot of time because Frank Harris missed a lot of time. But he was that tried and true. So I just think that they're kind of having to reset down in San Antonio, and that's really the biggest issue with them. But as far as Texas State goes, I mean, I don't know if y'all watched the game or not, but Jordan McLeod got hurt. Ishmael Mahdi got hurt, so that is going to affect the outcome in a close game like this. And so, based on what GJ Kinne said, Jordan McLeod is looking like he avoided a serious injury, which is great news because he's obviously a really good player and a big time get for them in the transfer portal from JMU, but. Mahdi had a fumble, got hurt, didn't come back, and those injuries, I think, really bit Texas State as much as anything. And then, who comes in is RJ Martinez, the former Baylor backup, and he comes in and throws a ball that gets tipped and picked, and that kind of ends any chance they had there at the end. So I think injuries really played a big role in last night's game for Texas State. But to your point, overall, there were guys after 1 week like, hire GJ Kinne for name a job, like Arkansas, Baylor, like anybody, because he's young. That's basically what he's young, and he wears his hat cool. So let's hire him.
He has an offense that's high.
Yeah, well, yeah, and the offense is the biggest thing. But I don't know. I still feel like he's got some big skins on the wall that he's going to have here in college football as a coach. But I did feel like that was a little bit premature and just a matter of people wanting their guy gone versus more or less actually really thinking GJ Kinne's that guy just now. He's close, but I think this year, it's been, not what you expected whatsoever. They've been thrown a few losses that you were not anticipating looking at the schedule before the year. So it's been a lot rougher of a go than we thought.
Louisiana's 7-1 too, so they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I was going to mention those guys, RJ Martinez, but Ismail Mahdi last year at 1,331 yards rushing, 10 scores. He's got 728. Injured late in that game, 3 touchdowns this year, so he's not having quite the year.
He used to be on my superlatives list every single week, it felt like last year, and he hadn't been on there a single time. Maybe one, and it was early in the year.
Oh, you mean Mahdi?
Yeah.
I'm looking at his games. He had a pretty good game against Arkansas State, 164 on 17 carries.
No touchdowns. He's only had 3. In fact, what I'm saying, he has not
one
produced
last night. Yep.
As much as he did last year for whatever reasons, and hopefully he's not too banged up after whatever it was that knocked him out of that game last night.
All right, so the AP poll comes out every, Monday? Or is it, no, I think that one comes out on Sunday. The coaches poll too, but the AP poll comes out on Sunday. It doesn't have much more of an impact than now discussion. It used to decide for dozens of years, decades, who won the national title. Like the coaches poll had their own, but that's changed to BCS and now where we are. But a note about this, college teams that have been ranked in a decade every single year. Now, I was thinking, that means they were ranked every year for 10 years during the decade. Michigan in the 70s. Alabama, of course, when Saban took over and became evil for Alabama in a fun-loving way. Nebraska in the 90s, Florida State in the 90s.
Those were the days.
God almighty, they were. It were 25 years ago. The most ranked in every poll as far as they've been ranked, all of them, look at them. Any surprises there? There's nobody that jumps out. But there's Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Alabama, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Texas, Georgia, Penn State, USC, Florida State. Now, obviously, Nebraska and Oklahoma are Nebraska's been in a bad stretch for a decade. Oklahoma, 2 of the last 3 years. But that's just a note about those who have been ranked the most during, ever. And there we are with that.
So that's cool, but basically take the headline, most years ranked, and just replace it with literally anything else, and that'd still be the same 10 teams.
No,
I mean, that's...
Yeah, it would be wins, bowl games,
championships,
Heisman Trophy winners, maybe.
Draft picks.
Yep.
It's the same teams.
Yep.
For the most part. There might be 1 or 2 you switch out, but that's the only thing I have when there's all these. That's a cool note, don't get me wrong. But
no, you just tore it apart, basically.
No, but oftentimes with college football, you look at the most anything, and it's you can guess 9 out of the 10 teams because it's the same teams historically. But
no, you're right.
That's a hell of a level of consistency that, you'd think that would be pretty easy to be ranked, one time in a decade just to keep that going?
Yeah.
And the fact that so few have done that's actually kind of surprising because...
No, it's ranked every year during a specific
ranked
decade.
Sorry, that's where I misunderstood.
Every single week for 10 consecutive years.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah, but again, it's the same teams you would think. Florida State and Nebraska in the 90s, the runs that they had with Bowden and Osborne. And then the only team... that is, Michigan, that was Bo Schembechler, and then he, of course, seceded, eventually moved. But I didn't know that. But that makes sense. I thought there would be more teams that were ranked every single poll for a full decade. I thought USC might be in there, Alabama a couple of different times, Oklahoma, but that's not the case.
That's also the top 10 recruiting rankings. That's also you can go on and on and on. But I do appreciate what you're really trying to do is make us as Florida State, Nebraska, and Oklahoma fans feel better about our programs in the midst of whatever the hell this season has become. So that's what you're really trying to do, and I see you, and I And I feel you on that.
Well, then Nebraska would not be a part of that on rankings, on recruiting.
No.
They were rarely ever a part of that. They did
I
it
said
because,
8 or 9 out of the 10.
Kansas and Iowa State and K-State fans and all the others who hated them, they were cheating because they had the Prop 48. But you know what? I wish they'd cheat again.
Here's what, like everybody talks about. Look, Nebraska did a couple things really well when it came to recruiting under Tom Osborne. They could go in and find a superb athlete from California or Florida or Texas that would get behind their big offensive line and be a star, right? They did that really well. But they also had a corner on the market of the best and biggest offensive and defensive line on the country who the 10 best linemen in Nebraska only wanted to go to Nebraska every single year. So everybody, or really in the Midwest, in any of those states,
and Texas, they pulled a few people from Midland, et cetera.
But they had that where, like, even Ohio State could go into, Omaha and be like, hey, we'd like you to be our left tackle. And they're like, Tom Osborne was here 6 months ago. He said hello to my grandmother and offered me a scholarship. Yeah. So go screw.
They had an advantage. They had an advantage. They were able to put guys away in the redshirt program, freshman team. They did, but that wasn't against the rules at the time.
And that was the case for a lot of teams. They were like, Tom Osborne was just really great at that. But I don't think that's the case for anybody anymore.
No.
I mean, like, again, you're going to have your recruiting advantages, but there's not going to be – I guarantee you the times that coaches go in to – a place thinking like, oh, we're going to have this kid locked down. His dad went here. His mom went here. That's where they met. And then it's like, hey, how would you like to come to Auburn? And they're like, oh, no, I'm going to Georgia. I'm sorry. I don't really care about Auburn. Doesn't matter to me.
UT Parking, I said this, and then he put this in and I had fun with him. The AP and UPI used to mean something back when radio was a major way to catch the games. Nowadays, the AP is about as useful as toilet paper, especially since some AP voters are non-ball knowers. That's what I said. You missed that part. That's exactly right. It doesn't mean as much other than discussion, maybe a little bragging rights, but in the end, none of them matter because they don't decide the national championship.
I mostly agree with that. I think you saved it for me when you said it doesn't matter as much because I still think it matters. I still think it matters for records purposes. I still think it matters for positioning purposes, even though the playoff goes in and eventually does their thing. But the whole time these games are being hyped up, what are they using? They're using the AP ranking.
Oh, no.
That's
Garrett, do you have the list of games this weekend? You're
exactly
as
right. Much, but the whole reason we're like, hey, it's number 11 versus 14. That's the AP ranking. It's number 6 for 7. That's the AP ranking. So they still matter to some degree, but as much. No, they don't matter as much, but there's still, a bit to it that does matter. And I do think that there are some very questionable decisions. I understand the whole, this is what it reminds me of is that you can't criticize college officials. People try to get on AP voters, and immediately it's like some newspaper reporter's like, I'm working all day Saturday. I can't possibly be asked to watch all of these games and know it completely. But, you can look at records, and there are some decisions that are made when they put the polls together and you see how everybody voted. You're like, how in the hell did you come to that conclusion? And there's a lot of, really suspect – positioning of teams sometimes that normally does not go the way of the teams that aren't the biggest brands. And that's what bothers me about the AP poll is just the guys who clearly aren't paying attention or they just are never going to give the benefit of the doubt to the school that's not 100 years of history. You know what I mean? Iowa State has to win twice as much to get the respect that Auburn would get or, an Alabama would get. And I have a problem with those voters. But that's why I think it's good, unlike college football officiating, that we can see the polls each week. So you can go see why this guy has South Carolina at 24 versus having that. So there is some culpability, and I do appreciate that transparency when it comes to the poll.
All right. Well, in the chat room, I know of some of you who have texted me, more than one, who have texted me when a poll comes out because you're a little frustrated where your team might be ranked or how could they. So you care. Listen, I hope my team is among those ranked, and they were for a week or two, and that's it. But for the most part, the last decade, they have not. It is still it's a bragging right. It's like, hey, we're in the top 5. And if somebody, I've seen the reactions when the polls come out. How in the world can anyone not have so and so and so and so, or how are they not ranked high enough or not? So people still do care about it.
No, they care because they still matter, though. That's what I'm also saying is they still matter. They matter from a perception standpoint. They matter in terms of the TV draw when you have that number next to your name. So it's a big deal to still have that. It matters in your history books. It matters. I mean, Oklahoma, or name a team, has inevitably at some point put out a graphic of like most appearances in the AP top 25. I mean, I know granted college teams, they promote anything that's like good news. It's like Jerry7 on Twitter said, we're the top 7th best team of all time. Like, college literally will promote anything that appears to be good news from anybody. Like, Al Jazeera says that, Texas football is the 5th. Like, they'll promote anything. But I do think in the case of the polls, that is a lot of promotion, but it is also a lot of perception. And I do think perception matters, and it's clear that some leagues, some teams don't get as much of a benefit of the doubt when it comes to that perception and therefore promotion and hype as other teams do.
Garrett, do you have the bangers? We have what I call bangers, right? Top 25 bangers. This is for this weekend. There's only 2 games. Sometimes there's 4 to 5, and this is number 4 against number 3. It's a banger. Banger means 2 teams, both of them, that are ranked in the top 25. We use that. Pitt, of course, at SMU is also yet another part of the top 25. So there we are with that.
I sure hope Eli Holstein's healthy, because otherwise that Pitt SMU game is not nearly what it's supposed to be.
Jennings is also a little,
and he's also not very good. Last we saw him, that could be health as well. But yeah, he was not on a good one when we last saw him either. No,
he has a standard to live up to.
Oh, I mean, that was he broke.
It's not
my
the
heart.
name on his jersey, the 3 letters of SMU. It's the fact that he was on our show.
Yeah, he does.
Well, he's got to stop turning the ball over so much, but he's also got to get healthy. So, yeah, I mean, I want to see Kevin Jennings versus Eli Holstein in full health. I don't know that's what we're going to get, though, on Saturday, which is unfortunate because that's obviously a big game. A lot of the reason why, because it has got those you wouldn't mention the game as much if it didn't have those rankings next to it. So, again, perception and positioning and all those things, those rankings still do matter. They're just the way they don't matter is they don't determine necessarily the playoff field or you getting into the playoff. But
I wonder if they have any kind of discussion or influence when they're having the college football playoff committee meetings.
I think wins over top 25 teams. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to say they don't matter is so. For example, you're BYU. You've played SMU and K-State. Those are 2 top 25 wins that you have. You have no others remaining on your schedule that I can recall off the top of my head. And if you're the Big 12, like, granted, you don't really have a lot of teams that are necessarily deserving of that based on what we've seen. Like, look who's on their schedule. None of those teams deserve to be top 25. So there's nothing you can do about that. But if there were a team that's borderline that doesn't get the benefit of the doubt that Vanderbilt gets in or somebody else, well, that's maybe a 3rd or 4th top 25 game that BYU would have that they're not getting because the perception of the polls is not favoring. That's why it matters. And, so I think I've highlighted like 10 reasons why they still matter.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, luckily that's not the poll that determines the playoff field.
No.
So that's the good thing.
Well, yeah, because forever and ever you could have split championships, like in '97, Nebraska, Michigan. That's not the only year. Roger the Dodger, the committee uses the AP when it helps their narrative.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. So what are top 25 wins? Are they wins that they were ranked at the time, or are they wins?
See, that's a great question.
Well, no, but is it at the time? Is it at the end of the season? What is it?
What do you think it should be?
All I know is what it is whatever fits that person's narrative. That's literally the answer to this question. That's what it is, though.
I've seen it positioned as if they are 5-2 against the top 25 that is current. But what if a team was really, really good early and they were ranked in the top 10 and you beat them, and then they lost a quarterback or their main guys and they fell into a slump and they end up out of the top 25?
Here's your answer. It's whatever's the better metric.
Yeah.
That's what they use.
Yeah, I think we should go back to BCS rankings like a month into the season. Do those for weeks and weeks. No rank, like I would love to see no rankings. Preseason number 1, it means nothing, but then it carries weight. Preseason number 1, preseason number 5, they were this. And here's the other thing you hear a lot. Oh well, when Ohio State beat Wisconsin was number 10. But if Wisconsin lost 7 games after that, they were never number 10.
No, that's
what
what
they
I'm
were
saying.
when they played them.
However
So that's
you want
the
to
thing that we
position
have to get rid of, because that's a false number.
Yeah.
While they were number 10 when they played them, the only reason that they would still be technically, if they were at full strength and they had a great team, and then in the subsequent weeks, like what happened with Oklahoma State a couple years ago where literally everyone got hurt and they were down like 27 scholarship players to injuries, then you can be like, okay, well, that was a Wisconsin team we thought would be really good, but all 3 quarterbacks got hurt. They didn't have a running back. Their offensive, like all those things happen. Okay, but that's a rare thing. It should just happen later on when we have actual proof.
It depends on the narrative they want to explain to you, Craig.
Yeah.
You have a story there?
I mean, when we get to it.
Well, we got to go because we have a guest in 5 minutes, so go ahead.
All right. Well, this was from Football Scoop a little while ago, but the Big 12 is looking into security issues with their headset communications that go from the coaches to the players. New technology being used this year. The conference has asked all 16 members, to return their coach-to-player communication equipment after reports that teams could listen on opponents' conversations. So that was reported by The Athletic today. According to The Athletic, there were issues with operational security that became apparent during the A&M Arkansas game. So that, if you'll remember that story from back in September, or actually that was like a month ago. Yeah, September. And so all the conferences got notified about that at the time period. But then this cropped up here recently, I guess, concerns raised on Tuesday within the Big 12, which led to the league asking every school to return their equipment, and it will now be outfitted with new encryption technology to fix the issue. And they hope that everybody will have sent their stuff and received it by the time games kick off this weekend, but all the schools have been told to provide an alternative just in case they don't get the equipment back. Nobody has accused anybody of cheating, according to The Athletic, but I've already had somebody reach out to me that apparently there's a Texas Tech fan or fans that are saying that Baylor did this. So that's what the anonymity will lead to.
By even bringing that up, you give credence to that story.
I
But you're right. I saw.
I guess it happened 2 years ago in Lubbock as well. I don't know.
Yeah, but what you said, not investigating any accusations of cheating related to the helmet communications, nor has anyone been requested by any members. An official of the Power Four Conference has said they have notified their schools beginning in October, and none have reported issues and or concerns. But that's you wonder, with all the technology and communications and all the headsets, and players have the ability to listen to their coach, if that's a possibility, that someone could start to have a chance to hear what they need to hear.